Hacker Stories.
It is time for Hacker Stories, where we talk about some of the true heroes in society, be they black hat, white hat, or gray hat, the hackers of the world, all around the world. And before I get into that, I do want to make a quick mention that we are working on getting on Stitcher. So if you like Stitcher, I will post on Facebook, the SovrynTech Balnea, on Google+, and at SovrynTech.tumblr.com, where you can connect with everything, including SoundCloud, Instagram, and a lot of other great services. I will be posting when we are officially on Stitcher, but I just want you to know that that is coming. And so let's go with Hacker Stories. Now, I'd love to dedicate this entire episode, but really I need to dedicate the entire show of SovrynTech to Aaron Swartz, who unfortunately passed away very recently. And Aaron Swartz, was a hacker. He is popularly known for, he helped develop Reddit, which is a insanely popular, social service, internet, like aggregated kind of, brings the internet all together. And there's a topic about something. That was the whole point of Reddit, is like, yeah, well, there's a little bit of something of everything on the internet. We can bring it all together. And thus Reddit was born. And unfortunately, he took his own life. He committed suicide. And I haven't wanted to do this story right after it happened, because it's been a few weeks since he committed suicide. But because I wanted a lot of information to get out there as to what exactly is going on. But now I've come to the conclusion that there's just so much like back and forth information that it's very difficult at the moment to make a whole lot of sense of it. So I will keep, my listeners updated as to what is going on with the Aaron Swartz story. In any case, this was a young man. He died. He was, only in his late 20s when he took his own life here. Who really, he put his money where his mouth is. He was on trial. The reason that he committed suicide, or at least the what people think is the reason, and his parents have made this claim, as well as lots of others, is that he was on trial for like taking, he broke the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. He was facing like 30 years in prison and $1 million fine. He was accused of like taking information, like something like 3 or 4 million academic journals from MIT. And there's debate as to whether like he had legal access to them. So, he wasn't actually doing anything illegal, and that's why there was going to be a legal battle. But there was a lot more than that. This guy did so much. He creating Reddit, amongst other things, he made a pretty good chunk of change. $1 million, I'm sure, wouldn't have been a problem for him to pay the fine for that. But definitely, at least I think they said at least 30 years that he was going to be facing in jail, at least, if not longer. And again, he was 26. That's not living. The jail system, doesn't do anything for anybody. Sorry, it's very hard for me to bring the, to really like express just how useless the prison system is. And, it's supposed to be like that you get rehabilitated by spending time in prison. You get to think about the things you've done wrong and, blah, blah, blah. But especially for, I can't picture this. Maybe he was like an expert in Krav Maga and I don't know about it. But, he would have been entering a relatively vicious, unintentional or like forced society. Of course, it's intentional. It's intentional by society to throw these people into these groups. And that had to be positively terrifying, unbelievable. So very tragic that this happened, that he decided to take his own life because again, speculation, because the government, just can't understand the nature of information, can't understand human nature, and it doesn't. I'd like to read Jeffrey Tucker did what I consider a fantastic write-up on Aaron Swartz as a hero. And I mean, it reads kind of like an obituary to some degree, I suppose, but I think it's very important. It's very well written. And Jeffrey Tucker obviously is a very big deal in the anarchist and liberty community. And so here it is by Jeffrey Tucker, Aaron Swartz, Hero and Martyr. My apologies for the sad tone of this piece. I can't do this in Jeffrey Tucker's voice. The guy is so unique. But anyway, but a hero has fallen, and we need to pay him tribute and make sure his death is not in vain. Every turning point in the history of civilization has its champions and its opponents. The opponents of the digital age are those who use the power of the state to keep the population in a state of ignorance, even though the technology is at hand to universalize knowledge through digital networks. The main weapon they use is known as intellectual property, even though the monopoly censorship they advocate has nothing to do with actual property. The champions of the digital age are doing the opposite, breaking down the limits and working to spread enlightenment through peaceful means. They understand the astonishing power of computer networks to produce, reproduce, scale, and distribute unto infinity everything that can be rendered into digital form. Their work has set off the greatest migration in human history from the limits of the physical world to the unlimited possibilities embedded in global computer networks. One such champion, now a martyr for the cause of freedom, unfortunately, was Aaron Swartz. He was one of the brightest stars of his generation. The star took his own life in apparent frustration, depression, and fear over the ghastly hounding he was receiving from the U.S. Department of Justice. You might say that this David should have battled this Goliath to the death. But Aaron was only 26, a brilliant, kind, and sensitive young man whose passion was not war, but enlightenment. It was too much for him. Born in Chicago, he showed astonishing promise at an early age. He came of age as the internet opened to the world. He was winning prizes and meeting the greats at MIT at the age of 13. At 14, he co-authored Really Simple Syndication, an innovative means of assembling and distributing web content that makes web browsing easy. He's talking about RSS at 14 years old. Aaron Swartz helped develop RSS, which is how really you're listening to me right now. Anyway, it powers the app economy, makes reader programs work, and enables the content to be mixed and remixed all over the digital universe. Aaron founded an Infogami, which later turned into Reddit, one of the web's most popular sites for information sharing and content generation. As with most of his projects, Reddit pushes aside the gatekeepers and puts the tools of creation in the hands of users. He then founded OpenLibrary.org on the same principle. By devolving power to you and me and away from the big shots, we can create tools that serve humanity in unprecedented ways. To Aaron, the digital economy was not really about running the world through code and technology. It was about empowering people themselves with the ability to contribute to the building of ever greater technologies in the service of humanity. As much as he loved code, his true affections were for the human mind and the way technology enables it to take flight as never before. He could never understand why government was in resistance. He was like a person in the Renaissance, raised with the printing press, astonished at people who wanted to smash it. He was so convinced that digits were powered by human minds that he even put it to the test in seeking the real power behind Wikipedia. He refuted the supposition of even co-founder Jimmy Wales that it was a relatively small number of editors who were the main content providers. He demonstrated that the main providers were millions of users themselves, thereby upending even what the owners and experts had supposed. He was only 19 years old when he showed this. Aaron was facing a trial this coming April, with him on one side and the full power of the world's most heavily armed government on the other. The prosecution wanted him fined more than $1 million and jailed for possibly 30-plus years. And what had he done? He hid a laptop in a closet at MIT and downloaded academic papers that were already available to millions around the world with the apparent attempt to make them available even more broadly. That's all he did. For this, he was charged with wire fraud and computer fraud. The database he tapped into is known as JSTOR. It is a global archive of academic papers published over the last 100 years in all fields and disciplines. It allows students to search, assemble, cite, and study in ways that could have been unimaginable a generation ago. Bibliographies that once took months to assemble now take seconds. Research once available to a tiny number is now available to students and faculty the world over. JSTOR is a mighty service, even a marvel, and there are good reasons to celebrate the company and its achievements. At the same time, there is something squirrely about the service. It is available only at super high subscription prices and allocated based on geographic IP addresses. If you are on a campus, you can get the goods. If you are not and you have no logins, you're out of luck. Outside the IP range, it's darkness. Remember, we are talking about scientific research that is mostly tax-funded and from which the authors themselves receive no royalty or payment of any kind. Moreover, the subscription system is made profitable not because of the forces of free enterprise, but because the payments are made largely by public universities also living off taxpayers. The whole thing smacks of a kind of an information feudalism. The scientists are the serfs. Those without access are cast out into the darkness. To its credit, JSTOR never lifted a finger against Aaron. They knew of his downloads, but never pressed charges. In fact, JSTOR has responded to his activism by gradually moving toward a more open policy. MIT can't say the same, but the real villain here was the federal government. Stealing is stealing, barked U.S. District Attorney Carmen Ortiz, whether you use a computer command or a crowbar, and whether you take documents, data, or dollars. Funny. They take dollars. Except for one thing, that is completely false. Crowbars hurt people. Stealing dollars takes from one person to give to another, but Aaron didn't take anything away from anyone. Ortiz might not understand this, but when you download something, it doesn't actually remove it from the original server. It makes an exact copy. It can do this with no limit. That's the whole power of digital media. The driving motivation in Aaron's mind was information liberation. We have the capacity right now in our times to create global libraries of all known things. What's stopping it is this antique institution known as copyright, an outright government privilege for monopolistic producers who use the violence of the state to stop peaceful sharing of knowledge. Aaron was offended by such limits in times when they are wholly unnecessary and and cause unneeded human suffering. Aaron didn't choose the path of piracy and underground hacking to disable the feudalism. He wasn't even particularly exercised about copyright itself. What he favored was freedom, free speech in particular. He sought constructive alternatives, which is why he was a great champion of Creative Commons, a system that uses existing copyright law but allows writers and researchers to share their discoveries and creations with humanity instead of having them smothered. All that said, it wasn't his attempt to liberate JSTOR that caused the government to go after him. No, it was something far more specular. Aaron also founded Common Dreams as a vehicle for digital activism. Much to the astonishment of nearly everyone, he marshaled the power of global networks last year to beat back one of the most deadly pieces of legislation to ever be proposed by Congress, the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA. So he created a group called Common Dreams that took out SOPA. SOPA was at war with the whole idea of information sharing, which is to say the whole basis of modern economic life and cultural progress. It would have given the power to any private party to aggress against any distributor of information and to do so without warnings, bearings, or burdens of proof. Taken to its extreme, the legislation would have rolled back history to a pre-1995 state of being. Because no one told him that he could not, Aaron used every innovation to stop it. Within a matter of weeks, Congress backed off in absolute fear of the global outrage that had been engendered by the educational materials that Aaron had distributed. What no one expected had happened. Even politicians in the pay of media moguls backed down. It was beautiful. In doing this, Aaron not only stopped the Leviathan state, he pointed to the possibility of something completely marvelous, a reinvention of the way that citizens take part in the political process. In other words, he was showing how computer networks themselves could be used to upend the power of the state as we know it. He was innovating a new form of restraining power and giving it back to people, doing for the business of civic affairs what he had already done with technology. The establishment was insanely bitter about the defeat. Within days, the government took action against the popular file-sharing site Mega Upload in a military-style hit against its founder's private estate, using SOPA-like powers that Congress had just denied the beast. It was as if the establishment was saying, we don't care about Aaron and what he did. We want this power. We are going to use this power. The people have nothing to do with it. Aaron's work pointed to a brighter future. The government never forgave him for this. This is why they hounded him. This is why they wanted to bankrupt him. This is why they wanted him behind bars. They wanted him brought low. They wanted him in an orange jumpsuit, eating old bread and groveling before the judges and wardens, and they would accept no compromise. Despite his lawyer's attempts to negotiate, Aaron must be captured and jailed. He would not relent. He would not give up his dreams and let them be shattered by their lies, pomps, black robes, and prisons. Our heart breaks deeply and profoundly at Aaron's decision to take his life. Maybe he saw it as a last cry for freedom. His having done so makes it impossible for them to make him a slave. The state has taken from us an epic genius and humanitarian. What can come of this? Sometimes the suffering and death of one great individual can shock society into dramatic change in a legal practice. Such people become martyrs, and their memories touch the conscience of everyone. We are overwhelmed by the sense of loss, and we vow to never see its like again. In quotes, the tyrant dies, and his rule is over. The martyr dies, and his rule begins. Soren Kierkegaard. And that's by Jeffrey Tucker. Powerful, absolutely powerful words. Because we did lose a hero. And I say we in the absolute broadest collectivist sense, that of humanity. He's gone. And he was pushed. I firmly, no one can really say. His parents have made the claim that it's because of the government harassment, unjustly, and the lack of understanding, the lack of empathy that he was receiving from people that are supposed to be his public servants, quite frankly. And he took his life at 26 years old in mid-January 2013. And I agree with Mr. Tucker that we should vow to never see its like again. That, in fact, this writing mentioned Mega Upload. Mega's back up now. Mega Upload got shut down, but Mega's back up. We'll be talking about it in a future SovrynTech, after we see how well it goes. Its servers are pretty boggy right now because it's so popular. But Kim.com, that's the name of the guy that put it together. That runs Mega. And yeah, I think there needs to be some uproar if the governments ever go after him for this. For similar things, this copyright nonsense and whatever else, or the power to somehow rally the people outside of the purview of tyrants, the purview of governments. It's powerful stuff, and it takes some thinking about it. I will link to this to Jeffrey Tucker's write-up in the show notes. You can very easily Google Aaron Swartz, and you can just find a load of information as far as what's going on. They're finding out new stuff every week. And I thought that this was a far greater statement to make than to lay out a bunch of facts, at least at the moment. If something big does come up, I might even do, a SovrynTech special that day, that moment, be it 10 minutes long or whatever, to let you know about it. Just in case, you don't have the time or opportunity to keep up with the news. So, yeah, powerful words. And there's hackers. You look like Kevin Mitnick, who was in jail for decades. And, these people haven't done anything. That's the whole point Jeffrey Tucker was making, is that no one stole anything because nothing left where it was. And ideas they're not property. They're yours, but they're not property that can be protected by the gun. We'll be back with more SovrynTech. We'll lighten this up.